and welcome to Wine Library TV. I am your host, Gary Chuck, and this, my friends, is the Thunder Show, aka the internet's most passionate wine program. I'm in a good mood today. The Jets beat the Giants. Sanchez showed quite a bit out there, and more importantly, I'm in a cozy spot, in a cozy shirt, ready to rock out a very intense, nerded up, not super nerded up, but a very focused wine show. I think, once again, want to get really deep into the wines, want to pump out as much great content as possible. If we're going to be doing this, we got to bring it 110%. And I'm very focused on the wines we have here today. I want to talk to you guys about the 2000 vintage in Bordeaux. A very special vintage in a lot of different ways. First and foremost, it was a vintage that really changed everything. It was one of the first vintages that really took a substantial jump in the last 20 years of Bordeaux. The jump in price from 2000 compared to 99 was staggering and really kind of changed the price structure of first growth Bordeaux. They really started becoming $200–300 a bottle on release in that vintage, and that really kind of changed the way Bordeaux was priced. Prior to that, you could still get first growths in the 90s, 120. This was the real big jump, and this was really the first vintage. I mean, I saw 95 and 96, so I really lived through that. 98, the right bank was very hot, but 2000 was just insanity, a very hot vintage, and one that I really watched coast to coast and really was fascinated by. One of the biggest vintages I ever sold when I was buying Bordeaux from Wine Library, and it was a very fascinating vintage because it was very hot, people were buying feverishly, and there was a lot of intensity and anticipation for the vintage. Now, it was also a tale of two kind of totally different vintages. It was a very warm and wet winter, and it was the worst mildew in Bordeaux since like 1870. It was, which is like the classic mildew vintage, and probably if it was 30 or 40 years prior, it would have been a vintage that would have probably been a wipeout. But a really hot June and July, and a substantially awesome August and September. Not a cloud in the sky. Last 4 months just rallied heavily in Bordeaux and pretty much produced the hype of that vintage. Now we've got one wine from the left bank and one wine from the right bank in Bordeaux today. We've got the Chateau Gazin and the Chateau Brenier, also known as Brenier de Cru. We should probably jump right into them. Let's start with the Chateau Gazin. This is the 2000 Chateau Gazin Pomerol. It is a 90% Merlot, 7% Cabernet, 3% Cabernet Franc wine. I poured it a few minutes before I started tasting. I'll pour a little bit more. 18 months and 50% new French oak. 100 bones a bottle, 90 points Robert Parker. They make about 8,000 cases a year. It's about a 56-acre plot of land. And it's really kind of one of the really interesting Pomerol producers. Gazin, a lot of times, kind of gets compared to Chateau Petrus. It's really a wine that a lot of people are excited about. The vines are nice and mature. They're about 35 years old on average. They come on top of amazing sand and gravel soil. They really express beautiful Merlot flavors, and often in blind tastings, I've watched this wine beat out Petrus blind, double blind, because when somebody, that's how you really get humbled. So, a really, really interesting wine. Now, I did mention the 97.3. That is how it's planted. This specific vintage, sorry to kind of throw you for a loop there, is 85 Merlot, 12 Cab, and 3 Cab Franc, because Cabernet did really well in 2000, and Pomerol right bank producers used more Cabernet in that vintage. Some great color. Again, 90 points Parker, 100 bones, probably about 50 or so, 40 or so when it came out. Let's give it a sniffy sniff. Now, the first thing you're getting is like this gorgeous cranberry outer shell of like light chocolate as well. So a little bit of chocolate, a little bit of cranberry. There's a maturity to the nose that I like, almost like a little bit of a tomato juice as well component. Almost like V8-like. Let's give it a whirl. See, Lizzie, I water the plants. Anyway, really nice, dry, austere background, great little finish. Really singing. Heavy fruit coming through in this wine. I'm not even going to spit this one. Really nicely made. Big upfront fruit. Really elegant tannins. You could really understand at this point that you're drinking something a little bit older, you know? You get these wines, so many of us are just drinking wine way too young. If you have a cellar and you like Cabernet Merlot, big wines, Barolos, Amarones, you know, Shiraz, or I mean, anything, if you've got the ability to put away wines that are $25, $30, let's start at $30 and higher for 3 or 4 or 5 years, you will be shocked what happens to the development of those flavors. I love the gravel minerality of this red fruit. I get a chalkiness. There's clearly a beef jerky component as well in this wine. It's very meaty on the back end, almost like an Italian kind of meal, because I do get like this almost like tomato sauce component on this Merlot. Very bright on the back end, good long finish. This wine still has plenty of age to it. The tannins scream baby to me. I'm like a 3-year-old. I really like it. I just think it's very well made, and I think it brings a lot of character to the table. Just give it one more shot, because I like it so much. Very smooth. This would be a very popular wine. The fruit is very bitter, though. Keep that in mind. This is more of a sweet tart kind of like play. I'm going to score this wine 92 plus points. I think it's fantastic. It's showing great. It's pricey. That's really the only downside, but it's very well made. A great example of why the vintage is so exciting. A great Merlot-based wine, and I would not absolutely hesitate to order that in a fine restaurant if I saw it. All right, let's move on. Chateau Brenier 2000. Brenier de Cru, as it's known to many places as well. This wine rolls in at $80 US, 93 points Robert Parker. It is 92 points Stephen Tanzer, great scores. It is 75% Cabernet Sauvignon, 22% Merlot, and the rest Petit Verdot. So a little Petit Verdot coming through. It's a darker wine than the Gazine. I don't know if the lighting here will help you see what's going on here, guys, but there's clearly a darker aspect to it. Obviously, Cabernet being darker than Merlot. This is a 50-hectare estate, and it has a really long history. This was actually part of Chateau Bécheville, going back, 400 plus years. Back in 1666, it broke off and became its own thing. It had to be sold off by the Bécheville family. They had some problems there. And was classified in 1855 as a fourth growth. Has always, in my opinion, been an under-the-radar value. This was in the $40 range upon release. Still, you can find this for $70, $80 now. 93 points Robert Parker, 92 Tanzer. Let's give it a sniffy sniff. Great, just gorgeous color. Now this nose blows away the Gazine. Give me one more shot. Yeah, you get this beautiful lavender meets blueberry component. Almost like a lavender blueberry pie flavor on the nose. Just gorgeous. Huge intensity of it. It's undeniable, really. It's very, very serious. There's great just dark fruit coming through here. Really elegant as well. Very polished. And a smooth kind of factor that you don't see on many noses. Just kind of ocean-like, if that makes any sense from the smoothness of the nose, if you know where I'm going. Let's give it a whirl. This wine is freaking spectacular. This is beautiful Bordeaux. Textbook. I actually think that this wine is showing ridiculously well. There is huge intensity of fruit coming through on this wine. There is amazing blackberry, blueberries, blackcurrant, a hint of leather, but jammy fruit. I mean, just like over-the-top jammy fruit with almost a delicious factor that's in the 100-point range. I mean, just beautiful. Great. I mean, just fantastic. I'm going to score this wine 96 points. I think this is gorgeous Bordeaux and shows exactly why Saint Julien is one of the really underrated, undervalued, underappreciated Bordeaux regions. This is at the total southeast of Saint Julien. I'm completely blown away by how well this is drinking. This completely exceeds my expectations. Let me just give it one more shot. I'm going to score this wine 97 points. I'm not kidding. There's a little hint of tobacco, but the smoothness of this wine is redonkulous. What's really catching me off guard, and probably why I'm acting a little weird, and I apologize, is I probably had this wine about a year or two ago. I remember being like a 91, 92-point wine. So thus, experience, timing, maybe another year. I know this bottle came directly from the Chateau, so maybe it's been stored better than the one I had. I'm not quite sure why. I'm not quite sure how, but this is one of the best wines I've had this year. The 2000 Chateau Brenier de Cru completely rocks my face off. I am pumped that I am home and I'm going to be able to drink this wine for dinner tonight, because the way this wine is showing, it would be unjust if it didn't end up directly in my tummy. This is spectacular. Kudos to Cru, Brenier de Cru, bring in the thunder. A serious wine for you guys, finally. It has been at least, feels like over a year since we've had a 95-plus point wine. This is the balls. This is tremendous, fantastic, great. What a show. This is how we should do it all the time. After New York Wine Week, I just started getting like depressed about wine. This really revs me back up. 80 bones expensive, but boy oh boy, if you can afford it, go find it. Wine Searcher this up. Question of the day. What is the best thing about the year 2000? Leave a comment. Seriously. You, with a little bit of me, we are changing the wine world. Wow. Wow.